Every student is unique. Every student learns differently, and every student matters.
This is Idea Exchange, the Future of K-12 Education series, brought to you by McMillan Paston Smith Architecture.
So today we're talking about the timely subject of mental health in schools. What we thought we would do is share some of what other schools in the country are doing, and particularly one approach to mental health and well-being in schools. While we don't endorse any particular approach over another, we did want to add to that conversation and share with you the interesting new approaches that are out there. We're joined today by Sonny Thadani, CEO of Robin. In addition to being a father of three, Sonny became very passionate about well-being for those involved in schools, especially after volunteering with Sandy Hook Promise. He saw an opportunity to make a real difference in mental health, really at a broader scale, and that's how he started Robin. Robin is a company that serves schools and districts throughout the U.S. for students, teachers, staff, and parent well-being, and personal growth solutions. Their interactive approach is adaptable in a number of settings. Their approach also uses technology alongside real-world coaching. I'm excited to hear about their innovative programs and some of their early results. Sonny, thank you for joining us today.
Ben, thank you so much for that introduction and really excited for the conversation.
Let's look at the mission first, because really I know there's a lot of passion behind the mission. Your mission at Robin is really to help build more connected, supportive, and passionate school communities where each student, educator, and parent is empowered to thrive. What's behind that? You know, where did you start with this organization?
Sure. Well, there's a couple things behind that, and the first is me and my family and the opportunities that I've been able to have for my life. As you mentioned, I'm a father of three. I'm 42 years old, and I've had an incredible life. But I've had my own challenges and opportunities from those challenges. And really, over the past 10, 15 years, seeing family members and friends suffer from mental health challenges, not really understanding why or what they were and how to help. And then, as you mentioned, the organization Sandy Hook, in 2015, I had my first child. Sonia was born. And if you're a father, you know, sort of the mindset shifts, right? Your priorities, your aspirations, at least mine did. And I started thinking differently. And after I had a conversation with Mark Barden, who is one of the founders of Sandy Hook, and a father who lost his son that day, it shook me to my core. Right, I really couldn't understand what he went through, and I wanted to help. And as you mentioned, I started volunteering. And as I started volunteering and learning more about the organization, I learned about all the mental health programs for kids and why we need that. People think of Sandy Hook, and obviously after the school shooting that happened, but there's so much more that they do as an organization, and it opened up my eyes. I also, for the past couple of years, been a couple of years ago, a mentor of mine, and I've been lucky to have a few throughout my life, and sort of made me start thinking about what if everybody had a coach or a mentor. Because I was 14 years old, like many high school students, 14 to 15. My parents got divorced. I didn't make any varsity sports. Every girl said no to the junior prom. It was a difficult year or a year and a half for me. And I didn't have necessarily the skill sets to deal with those life challenges. And, you know, I fast forward to today, I look at family members, I look at friends, little cousins, brothers and sisters, and I see a lot of people aren't equipped. They don't have the coping mechanisms, and life is very different. As I went to high school in the 90s, it's very different today. And that's a combination of different things. And I started looking at it, I said, why aren't we equipping, you know, one day my kids, but our kids today with skill sets? Why aren't we be proactive? I see a lot of people out there, amazing organizations supporting mental health, clinical support when our kids, we see the stats, 1 out of 3 of our adolescents are suffering from anxiety and depression. That is a unbelievably alarming statistic. How can we get ahead of that? And that's when I teamed up with Scott Farber and the rest of the Robin team to say, let's provide a proactive, integrated solution to school communities. And that's a little bit about the birth of Robin.
Well, I think just to dive into that point that you made is mentorship. When we talk about wellness or mental health, that's a huge umbrella of services and circumstances. And so, but to your point about mentorship and equipping, even as a young adult, I could tell you my experience there is Similar experience to you, maybe in high school, but as a young adult, as a young professional, you still need coaching. As an adult, you still need coaching, and really, equipping us throughout our lives is really, I think, very important to understand because we all want to be successful, of course, but also provide something that's unique and interesting to the world around us. I think that's a great way to kind of lead into what your organization is really about. Appreciate that. So tell us a little bit about primarily who you serve at Robin.
Sure. So we serve, as you mentioned, schools and districts, but really what that means, K through 12. We have designed a program, and we actually started with high school, right? As a young organization with an idea, we started and looked at the market overall, and we saw that no one was really serving adolescents and teenagers. It's a tougher market to serve, right? Teenagers, I don't have them yet. They're, with hormones and social media and pressure and everything going on in their lives, they are a tough group to break through to. So as we started thinking about that cohort, what did we do? We talked to them, right? Our first entry point in was talking to ninth, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. What's working at your school? What are they talking about? What's important to you? And a couple themes came out of that for me, again, early in my career here. One, they were very open to talking about mental health and mental well-being. This generation is destigmatizing mental health. I think we see it all over. And the things that they say about their schools actually resonated with me a little bit. A lot of things were reactive. If there was a big fight or a drunk driving incident, I did this in my high school. I remember it so vividly around senior prom. They'd bring a crash car in the front of the school to remind the students. And it was quite powerful. But it was a point in time. It was a one moment right before the senior prom at the end of the school year. What about the 10 months leading up to that, right? There was a lack of consistency and continuity. And then we went from high school kids to middle school kids and started talking about them and with them and their parents and then educators. And that was the one theme that I saw was consistency and continuity. Why isn't there programs? There's a speaker that comes in for an assembly. There's a one-off, lesson plan or lesson that's given. And the second part of that was as much as, we think as a parent that our kids want to hear from us and from teachers that our kids want to hear from them, sometimes when it comes to these types of issues, they want to hear from a third party. People that have been through a similar challenge, that look and feel, that walked in their shoes. So while celebrities and athletes on Instagram and TikTok get the eyeballs of our young adults, when it comes to these types of topics, authenticity wins. And when we start developing our program, we started thinking about coaches, mentors, people in this space who look and feel like students who once went through a divorce, death, FOMO, whatever the various challenge that they faced, they can talk about it from their perspective, not telling the student what to do, but telling the student how they overcame that particular challenge.
Well, that's great. I mean, so in being consistent then and not being one point in that calendar, I think that you're using a little bit of technology to kind of extend and augment that. Could you tell us a little bit about that? Because I think that's really where that balance point comes from that you found. And I think that's extremely interesting to well-being overall.
Yeah, and I think the balance and integration are the key words here. Technology is going to solve so many problems for us in health and many areas of the world, but it's not solely going to solve it. We do need humans, and especially in the world of mental health. And we talk about social and emotional, right? These are buzzwords. The first word is social. How can we teach social skills with an app alone, with logging in by yourself and staring at a screen, right? We need human connection. So as we thought about our program and the best ways to approach and offer that continuity, consistency, and most importantly, results and outcomes, and we'll talk about that in a bit, we thought about the human interaction, right? The human centric approach of a coach coming into your community, talking to the students in large groups or small groups, and then following up. Because after a powerful speaker comes to your school, even to your office, to maybe wherever you might see somebody, 48 hours, 72 hours later, it doesn't matter who you are, you forget what that message was, even if you took great notes. So you have to reinforce some of those messages, and we've created those same coaches that come into your school virtually or in person have created these asynchronous videos, 30 seconds to about 120 seconds, up to 2.5 minutes of a message reinforcing something they spoke about or adding to the lesson or conversation they just had, allowing technology, the student, the teacher, the parent in real time to talk about mindfulness. Oh, what was that breathing exercise? Or how do I build grit and resiliency? I remember Coach Naisha talking about something. Well, great. Log in into your school system and see what that lesson was all about and watch a handful of videos. And every video then is coupled with a lesson, 3 to 5 minutes, right? These are small micro steps that we are taking. I heard a great quote, micro steps, too small to fail, right? Instead of too big to fail, too small to fail. Because what we're doing, you're not going to learn resiliency by listening to someone for 45 minutes in the cafeteria. You're going to start building a habit by doing it 3 to 5 minutes a day, a week, a month. And hopefully that consistency over time, starting in, when you're younger in elementary school and building, by the time you get to middle school and high school, you're developing and have developed these skill sets, and now you're practicing those skill sets. So again, leveraging, of course, apps and desktop versions, and then that coach that you saw on the screen, she's coming to your school next Thursday, and the kids get really excited about the coach now interacting, and they get to ask questions about their story, about some personal stories with them, and it really creates this environment where Robin is now, we humanize the approach, right? We bring the social back to social emotional.
Oh, that's great. I mean, it also gives them a little bit. Anybody who would use it, I would assume, a little bit more control of their own well-being, and I think
Sure.
that's fantastic. I mean, it puts them in the driver's seat. Broadening out a little bit. Do you have any good statistics about what kind of issue mental health, that umbrella of mental health, either the concern or the problems that are out there today, or you mentioned some very good examples of when you were first starting up, of
Yeah.
course, but anything that you've seen in schools today that kind of describes or demonstrates really the need to address this and address it now?
Yeah, I think there's two or three. I mean, there are many, as you might have thought, but there are two or three that school leaders, students, parents are talking about. One is relationships and connection. And I think adults can relate to this in a post COVID world. We're back to schools, we're back to offices. I live in New York City, I work in Midtown, and it's packed again, right? The coffee places, the elevators, and it's wonderful. I love it. But I have noticed, and I've noticed this in schools, and I've talked to district leaders and school leaders about this. People are afraid to make friendships again, and they don't know how to connect with people. Right, the essence of sort of human behavior, connection, and building relationships is gone and is taken away. And we're not necessarily. I think some schools are doing a wonderful job of this on their own, and that comes down to the staff and the educators rebuilding and teaching kids how to build those relationships and those social skills, right? Because in order to do math and history and English really well, you have to be able to raise your hand and ask that question, ask for help, ask for support, team up with a peer and collaborate on a project. That is one thing that I think is universal. We serve schools throughout this country, on the East Coast and the South, on the West Coast. This is a universal challenge about connection and relationship building that we address head on. The other thing that bullying and cyberbullying, it's out there, right? I think because of years of being home or the constant pressure that our students face through various different external factors, the bullying and cyberbullying incidents have skyrocketed, and educators aren't necessarily, all of them aren't equipped to handle that, especially with cyberbullying. That's a new thing. So that's something, a topic we talk about with our school leaders and our students, bringing them into the mix early. And the third that we're seeing is immaturity, right? Where a lot of people talk about in education academic loss. I think there's that maturity loss, right? The seventh graders are acting like fifth graders. The 10th graders are kind of like that eighth, ninth grade, which we know is a very difficult year, and that leads to the bullying, the lack of connection, and some of the other factors and academic results that we're starting to see. So I would say those are the three things that we're seeing and we're addressing. Now, in order to address those, you need skill sets, resiliency, mindfulness, grit, self awareness, the things that we teach day to day, but put it in practical terms. When life gives you a challenge, I don't know what challenges our students in X school or Y school are going to face, I know they're going to face challenges. And I think equipping them with these skill sets, I don't know the kids that well. The teachers and the parents are going to know them better than I ever will. But I do know these skill sets are going to help them in life.
For sure, and then augment that by reminding them over and over again, during the process with what you have on your application as well. I think that's really how you get to the success point. Is it's
Yep.
not just a one, as you mentioned, it's not just a one off. It really has to be integrated and thought through all the way. Cyberbullying, as also a student in the '90s, don't know anything about. We
Right.
didn't experience that. That's something that's new. That coping mechanisms might be similar in some ways to other aspects, but we've got to teach it so that they can apply it
Right.
in that way. So, were there any surprises that you found as you really started up the business? Something that you weren't really expecting as you were looking at well-being overall.
Yeah, and I continue to be surprised today, and I'll share an example. I was at a, we were presenting at a principals conference. There was about 45, 50 principals in a room. They get together monthly in many states around this country to do professional development and sort of learn about some of the new things and connect as a community. We were able to present at one of these conferences recently, and we do this quite often. And during our presentation, it's less about a pitch, and we actually give a coach comes in alongside our team, and we talk a little bit about Robin about for 30 seconds. But a coach takes them through a coaching routine, and this one happened to be about mindfulness. And the coach opened up with saying, "How many of you already have a mindfulness practice?" I was shocked to see how many hands. We're principals, probably average age, kind of 40 to 60 years old or so, a good mix of men and women, and I would say, more, almost half, a little less than half, raise their hand and have a mindfulness practice. I was shocked. We're in that world of mindfulness and resiliency and talking about these skills. And what I heard is that educators are so overwhelmed that they were looking for different types of things for themselves. So put the students aside for a moment here. These are just principals and educators and staff and leaders that are using different type of coping mechanisms and practices for themselves, and that continues to amaze me throughout this country. And it just shows you sort of the movement and the need, right? The market need is say what shocked me. I knew this was massive in terms of a market opportunity. I knew it was affecting black, white, purple, red, high income, low income. This is a global issue. This is not a particular targeted issue. I am still amazed at how big the issue is and how many school systems and communities have not figured it out. That continues to surprise me how everybody's talking about it and everybody excuse me doesn't know what the right solution, because every community from New York to Texas to California is a little bit different. Their needs are a little bit different, and there's not a company. We're not a one size fits all, and I think you have to learn in an organization to be effective to really listen to the school community, what's happening in their community, and can Robin address that?
I want to ask a little bit about outcomes that you've seen as you've gone away. But one thing that you were talking about, which I think is really important for us to call all kind of understand and maybe speak to a little bit, is that schools, while students are there, they're not the only occupant in that building. So being comprehensive about well-being or mental health doesn't just necessarily involve students. Certainly an important part, but one thing that I found interesting about Robin is that you're going into and talking about teachers, you're talking about parents, even down to support staff like school bus drivers. Could you say a little bit about that kind of approach overall, and if that's having merit across various school districts?
Yeah, absolutely. When we first thought about going to the market, obviously students were at the forefront because there are kids in the future. But we thought about how do we address the adults in the room too. And as a young company, we didn't want to take too much on, so we started with students. But as we started getting into school systems and learning about the challenges and needs, and we were at a conference, a school counselors conference, and we were presenting, and a school counselor came up to us. she won a prize. We were giving things away, like a free coaching session for Robin, get to know us. And a counselor came up to us and said, "Hey, we won the free session." I said, "That's wonderful. Let us know when you want us to do it, and what students and topic, etc." And she said, "Well, can we use it for us?" And I was a little taken back. I said, "What do you mean?" She said, the group of school counselors and staff in her community were going through a lot, right? They also went through COVID and all the Zoom fatigue and learning issues and parent demands and everything that our students went through, and coming back to school and dealing with everything now in person and all the stressors that they have. They needed our support as well. And it was been one of those moments where that light bulb said, wait a minute, how can we service our students and be effective and have sustainable long-term impact if we can't service the adults in their lives, educators, staff, and parents? So it reminded me of that. Like I've taken a flight recently, the video comes on and the oxygen mask drops, and I have three kids, so my first instinct is I'm covering their face way before my face, right? And then a friend said, no, but what if you pass out? We can't help any of your kids. And it's that concept of you have to take care of yourself in order to be effective for your students. And as we started thinking about what that means and how to roll out a program, we started offering that to all of our customers, new ones, old ones, and it took off like wildfire. And it didn't take off like wildfire because we were so amazing at building it, and it is a wonderful product, but it took off because the need is so great. And almost every contract, every opportunity we have with the school or school district includes educator and staff coaching. To your point about bus drivers, it's not just the teachers, and the teachers need a lot of support. But how about the cafeteria workers who are serving our students food every day? The bus drivers are first in, first out, right? If they're not in the right headspace and right mental well being, how are they treating and supporting our students on that bus? So to me, this is a community wide approach. And we talk about outcomes and being effective. That's how we can truly be effective. And we have to start measuring that effectiveness. And we have a program, part of our program is to measure how effective are we? And I used the word connection before. We use a survey developed many, many decades ago by these famous child psychiatrists called the Connectedness Survey. It's a 20-question survey on a Likert scale 1 through 7, and it talks and finds out how connected are you to your friends, your family, your community. And as a 20-question survey around that, we ask the students if the school allows us to get that information, not individual by individual, but by school, right? The high school, the middle school, etc. And the goal of Robin's program is to increase the level of connection in the school community. And I'm proud to report that we're averaging a 25% increase in the level of connection at school communities. And that's a really, really powerful metric because connection is specifically correlated to positive mental health outcomes. And that's sort of the measurement we use. Now, of course, we talk to schools about, do you want to use our service again, right? That's something we track as many companies do. But more importantly, as we talk about our coaches and our lessons, we ask students who are brutally honest with us, especially the older students, about, did this coach succeed? Did you learn something? Will you use the skill set? Right? Over 83% of the students that we surveyed will use the skill set that they learned about. Now, to me, that's unbelievable. 83% of kids will actually use, I don't know when they'll use it, right? They'll use it when they need to. But that's the takeaway, right? That Robin wants to, I don't want to give you something that you don't need. We might not be the best fit for every school, but for school communities who are looking to increase connection, they're looking to support their staff and their educators and their parent community. We are somebody that, can provide that level of a level of service.
Right. And so measuring that, I think that's great. I mean, that would be the primary question coming from an administrator or from a school district is it working? Is this beneficial overall? And I assume also that you've also expanded as a business too in that time with services as well. So talk a little bit about your growth trajectory, at least in the time that you've been doing this actively through Robin.
Yeah, it's interesting. How do you develop new products and services? Well, you talk to your customer, right? You talk to the students and parents, and they gave us so much feedback early on about, hey, make these videos short, sweet lessons. Many educators and administrators, I love what Robin's doing. How do we fit it in the school day? That's the number one question we get, and the number one concern that we get. The bell rings at 8:30. It's done at 2:30 or 3, depending on the school. Where does this go? And there's not a single answer I have. It depends, right? A lot of people now advisory. They're using our coaching service. They're playing our lessons. They're using the smart boards in the room. Some people are doing it after school. We had a program here in New York City, and they're very academic focused, very rigorous program in New York. They decided to do coaching after school, and they did our program after school, and they made it voluntary. Hey, come if you want to. And guess what? People came. Students came in record numbers. It was actually quite remarkable because I was a little concerned making it. Hey, come if you want, and people came. And it was almost that self-selection, right? People came because they wanted to learn about something. They wanted to grow themselves, and that appetite is there. And as an organization, I think sort of that trajectory fueled by students, parents, and administrators. We started a couple years ago with one school, then 3, then 7. I'm proud to say we're over 50 schools today and school districts. A lot in the Northeast, where again our backyard, but we're working with schools in Florida and Iowa and Tennessee, now Texas and California, and continuing as a company our expansion. But as I said, right, we can't be everything to everyone. And something I'm so proud of our team and what we do is really listen. What are the challenges facing your community? Yes, there are some universal challenges we spoke about, but there are very specific challenges. And as an organization who wants to be sustainable, right, to provide long-term impact, I think you have to, sort of pick and choose. Can we produce great outcomes? Because as you said, every superintendent, every principal, what does it cost, and what are the outcomes? And of course, they care about much deeper. But those two questions, right? I mean, that comes up in every first meeting, and I think that's the right two questions to ask too.
So one thing that you mentioned too is your growth in lots of different schools in lots of different parts of the country. I'm curious a little bit. Have you seen, because we're architects, we're educational planners, so the environment that we create through space is really our primary concern. How can it be the vehicle for better educational environments, for better outcomes overall? I'm curious, have you seen some spaces that work, and have you seen some spaces that don't? Are there any in your view over multiple different school districts and schools? Are there things that work spatially or architecturally that really set up schools to win?
Yeah. Yeah, we've seen the gamut of different types of school spaces. I've seen some incredible spaces, unbelievable, that I can't believe this is an actual school, and some that I can't believe it's an actual school, right? That are just so run down and old, and it's unfortunate. And I think some of the things, wellness centers have really taken off over the past 5-7 years. A lot of schools have built that for their faculty as well as their students. Calm areas in a corner of a building where it's the lights are a little bit down. I think for us, we're effective in every classroom because our technology is there, and the lessons are given and produced, and driven by the educators. But when we have in person, when we go to the schools and we're meeting with students, let's get them out of the classroom, whether it's a cafeteria or the gym. High ceilings, light, nature, for those over the winter in the many parts of this country, it's very difficult to go outside. But if we can get outside and we can get kids, and it's about being nature and being outside, but it's getting students or faculty to a place where they're comfortable. So maybe if the classroom reminds them of just academics and tests and quizzes, let's get them out of the classroom. And if it's cafeteria, again, we're also somewhat limited, right? Schools have only so much space, and we have worked in cramped spaces and in big spaces. And I can tell you, it is about a different space in that school community, that getting the students to a place of comfort. The gym happens to be one because it's big, it's expansive. There's room to just have a little bit of movement around, and these wellness centers that, again, years ago, this has been a trend, I think, for the past 10 years that schools have been doing and creating. It's a great place for students, outside of Robin, for students to have some time between classes, to do some homework, to take a minute, whatever they might need. I think that has been, from what I'm hearing, those centers have been really effective for a lot of students to sort of take it easy for a few minutes between stresses of class and life.
That's exactly what we're finding too. Is variety matters a lot to student outcomes. It's not just the classroom. I totally agree with you. That's what we hear from educators all the time, as well as change constantly, so that you can give students really that variety, and be more memorable in how you approach academics. Kind of overall, that's good to hear that you've seen that in real life, and in a good way, and maybe in a not so good way, where an area where we might use architecture to improve there overall. So thanks for that. One just kind of final questions here. I know you mentioned the perspective of a teacher, or the perspective of a principal and a board member. How much does it cost, and does it work? Is one thing, but there are funding for schools is a very difficult and elaborate system often, and I wonder if anything from that's already present in that funding mechanism and funding structure broadly can be applied here with the services that you're providing.
Yeah, many schools in different states have different grant opportunities and state funding. Now, outside of ACR and ESSER funding, which again is going to come to an end, and maybe it'll be extended, maybe it won't. But for us, we talk to schools. We know funding is challenging for leaders, and whatever parts of funding they want to use for our services, we're going to work with them to support them. But we do talk to schools, again, talk about sustainable, long-lasting impact to build us into future budgets. So the benefit of the ESSER funding, it's there. It's there to plug the hole that we had over the last couple of years. But again, there's an end to that. So we talk to schools, if that is the area of funding, great. But if you can build us into your budget, because again, we don't want to be a 1 year, 1 semester solution. This works over the course of many years, right? The students and the educators. Professional development budgets, a lot of the educator coaching and staff coaching comes out of, which is just a different budget line item. And we do support in grants and other various sponsorships to subsidize or work with schools that, hey, can only afford it maybe for the high school to start, or maybe a few grades. Okay, what can Robin do to help subsidize some of those costs through sponsorship and grants? Again, mostly on a local, state by state basis, but there are a variety of funding opportunities, federally and locally, that our services fall under. So if schools ever get interested, but they're concerned about that, we're happy to walk them through and have some experts on our staff to help them with that type of funding questions.
Great. So if it, and I think if a superintendent or a board of education, or even a principal is kind of looking to learn more, what's the best way to connect with you guys?
Yeah, our website certainly is my-robin, robin.com is certainly a great way. You can reach out to me directly, and I'll send you my contact information after this. But yeah, we're out there. We're want to be the thought leadership. We do a lot of white papers and conversations, teaming up with psychologists, psychiatrists, therapists, and experts in this world. I think that's really important. Is we're building an ecosystem. We're building an ecosystem for mental health. You said at first, mental health is this giant conversation and umbrella. We play a small part, right, within the world of mental health. And as we expand and grow, we're learning that there's a school that needs tier 3 in clinical help. That's not what we do, but we're going to go help you find those solutions, right? We want to be that ecosystem solution for schools, because we know how demanding a principal or superintendent's job. They're not going to call 25 vendors, get 18 quotes. I mean, it's not possible in a day. We will help and support. And I think a lot of communities and schools are interested in Robin, not only because of our product and our service, but our ability to say, nope, that's not us, that's this group. Or, nope, we can't do that, right? I think sometimes, that's really tough to say, because you really want to help, but you want to help, right? You want to provide that outcome, and some of that outcome might not be us. So I think that ecosystem for mental health, as you started with, really important to make sure communities have access to that ecosystem, and hopefully we can help provide that.
Well, this is a great way to kind of start that conversation again, now that we've all have returned back to school. So I just am appreciative of you and what you've done so far, and best of luck as you kind of travel forward, because it is a broad topic, and it is something that that is solvable and coachable. And I think this is a great way for us to kind of think about it broadly in for everybody that's involved in schools. So thank you for your time, Sonny. Really appreciate the conversation. Look forward to keeping you top of mind when we talk about mental health and certainly coaching in the future.
Thanks, Ben. I appreciate giving me the opportunity to talk a little bit more about what we do. Thanks so much.
One thing that really stood out to me was consistency. Consistency, it means not just one time when we talk about mental health and wellness in schools. It really is creating that consistent program, reinforcing those lessons through time. And the way that we approach that might be in smaller groups with shorter interactions and with spaces that really accentuate the ability for that student to learn and take those lessons to heart. So one final takeaway that I had was also the comprehensive nature of where we need to look at mental health in schools. It's not just the students; they are a very vital, important part of a school community, of course, but it is about the teachers, it's about the staff, it is about the parents, and being able to really provide service for all of the occupants of a building does make a difference.